Stand firm with the belt of truth buckled around your waist, with the breastplate of righteousness in place, and with your feet fitted with the readiness that comes from the gospel of peace. In addition to all this, take up the shield of faith with which you can extinguish all the flaming arrows of the evil one. Take the helmet of salvation, and the sword of the Spirit, and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God.
Last time on Spirit Katana, Jesus rescuing people, healing blind, making people walk. Betrayal. Jesus arrested, being mocked. Now it's time for the season finale of Spirit Katana. Welcome to Spirit Katana. I'm your host, the old man.
I'm Ruby.
I'm Rosella.
I'm Jadefire.
And I'm Big Mama.
Together we are a family that's venturing through the book of Matthew. And we are completing our journey this week as we sharpen our understanding of God's Word and how it affects our lives. Alright, and we're sorry that this is coming a week late. We had planned to have it going last Monday, but there was some illnesses, some strep throat, and some stomach bugs going around that kind of hampered us from recording. But we're here now to wrap it up, and then we'll be on our long hiatus. Summer break!
Yeah.
All right. I think we left off with soldiers mocking Jesus, and so now we are moving on to the crucifixion. This is going to be our darkest and then happiest episode, I think.
I drew a sad face emoji next to the words.
Hopefully that's not your only note.
It is not.
And we will start this week with Ruby.
The crucifixion. Verses 33 to 44. What does God want my life to look like? Not to try and prove myself all the time, because right here, if Jesus tried to prove himself, we would not have been saved. Like if he tried to prove his power and get down from the cross.
Yep.
And people were mocking him. We wouldn't be saved right now.
Very
we
true.
wouldn't have taken our sin. Although with the way God works, he probably would have found another way to save us.
All right. Rosella.
I wrote that he could have saved himself if he wanted to, but he didn't.
Okay.
Did he want more?
To save us because he loved us.
What's interesting is that his way of saving us was something that seems quite foolish to a lot of people, because he was dying, and they're like, well, how's that save anybody? He's just dead.
What good can they do? They're dead.
Right? Alright, Jadefire.
I put down, what can you learn about God / Jesus? That, yes, he could have gotten down, but did not.
So basically my notes.
Yeah, you stole my note. That's why I gave you
No,
this
you
one.
stole my notes
No,
because
you
I said it first.
Oh, jeez. Settle down, Jade. Stop acting like children. Alright, so, Big Mama, what do you got?
Mine is actually similar to Jubilee's from a different point of view. So, when he is on the cross and they say, if you are the Son of God, come down from the cross. And whereas she would be like, oh yeah, I'll show you. Like that's more your inclination. Mine is like, oh, I must be doing it wrong if they're telling me that I'm doing it wrong. Like, I'm much less sure of myself. I have like the opposite problem where I don't feel confident in my calling all the time. And so if someone were to say that to me, I'd be more like, oh, I'm supposed to be doing it that way? Okay. Like, I would have messed up, but for a different reason. Same mess up, different reason.
Yeah, mine would be like, oh, really? You don't think I can do that? Well, just watch and see then.
Or I'd be like, oh, I'm supposed to. Okay, well then, just a minute. I'll be right down.
So, yeah, mine connects to a note I had from the previous week at the beginning of the chapter, but I highlighted verse 37. Above his head they placed the written charge against him. This is Jesus, the King of the Jews. And 42. He saved others, they said, but he can't save himself. He's the King of Israel. Let him come down now from the cross, and we will believe in him. And I just found it interesting because they, in their disbelief and mockery, they admitted a truth. He is King of the Jews. And he does get off the cross. Whether it's by his own power or not, doesn't really matter. And he does save himself, because he does come back.
Yeah.
And do you think they all believed in him? Probably not. Some maybe, but I don't think they all did. So I just thought it was very interesting that they, once again, are sort of prophesying in their disbelief and mockery.
Yeah.
They would have found, even if he did come off the cross, they would have found a reason how that happened or something.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the nails were loose. I guess he just fell.
Yeah, that's a big thing with a lot of things where people are like, well, if they do this, then I'll believe them or whatever, or then I'll trust them and stuff. But if you're already not, you're probably, like, there's not really anything that's going to convince you to believe in God.
Didn't Gideon put God to the test? Was it him who's like...
But he didn't have a disbelief in God existing. He was trying to make sure that he knew what God wanted him to do.
Because he really didn't want to do it, so he wanted to be real sure that's what he was supposed to be doing.
Yep.
Which I can see.
I was just going to say, I can relate to that so hard.
Like, if you really do want me to do this, I will, but I need to be real sure that that's what you're telling me to.
Yep, because this does not sound like a fun idea at all.
Yeah.
How does making a cloth wet and making it dry?
Well, he put the cloth on the ground, and then the next morning, when all the grass was wet, the cloth was dry.
Yeah.
And then the opposite happened.
Yeah.
Then the cloth was wet, and the grass was dry.
Yeah, I was asking, like, how does that tell him that God really wants him to do it? Oh,
Because he asked God to do that exact thing if that's what he wanted.
yeah, I heard it when I said it.
Well, I'm glad you got there.
Verbal processing! Nailed it!
Is that something that was discussed?
No, that's just my problem all the time.
Oh.
I have to verbally process, and usually everyone has to come on the journey with me.
Sure. All right.
I've been on that journey so many times with you. You'll just be saying things, I'm like, that makes sense. What? Because you're like saying things, and then you're just thinking half of it while saying the other half of it, so I'm catching every other word, basically, and I'm like, yes, sure, what?
Yeah, I've been on that journey more than you.
Is this a crazy woman, or is she my mother?
Are you a crazy child?
No.
Another note from the historical context. In 34, they gave him wine mixed with gall to drink, but when he tasted it, he refused to drink it. One of the reasons why that might have been is that the wine was like a little bit of a relief, some moisture and all of that. But the gall is actually a poison to bring death on quicker, and potentially had some pain relief effects as well. And so when he tasted it, he would have recognized that right away because it's very bitter, and he might have refused it because his death wasn't meant to come necessarily quickly, and he wasn't there to get pain relief medication. So that's one theory out there, is that he refused it because of that gall, which was usually added in order to speed the process of death.
Didn't, someone who wanted to help him go and get it?
No, that's farther on, and that's just with wine. In 48, one of them ran and got a sponge filled with sour wine, put it on a stick, and offered him a drink. I think in another gospel, he does accept that and drinks it because it does not have gall in it.
Interesting. All right. Well, then we will move on to the next section, which mine is titled The Death of Jesus, and goes from 45 through 56.
So close to
The death of Jesus.
yours is so close to mine. It's the death of the Savior. It's verses 45 to 56.
Perfect.
Mine's 45 through 56, the death of Jesus.
Awesome. So we're all in the same area. Okay.
This part is awesome. This part is awesome.
Yes, we love dying Jesus.
It's awesome!
I agree. I just think it's funny.
So intense.
All right. Rosella, why don't you start us off this time?
What I wrote is, what does he want your life to look like? To love others.
So much so that you sacrifice your life for him?
No.
No?
Well,
I mean, yes, that's one thing you could do, but I don't think that's what she means.
Well, here's the thing.
you're confusing.
Because we are called to die to ourselves, but that doesn't necessarily mean actually physical death right off the bat. So we can die to our own wants and desires to serve others. Like Jesus, he didn't necessarily want to go through this. He prayed for it to pass, but he also went through it because it was God's will, right? Mm-hmm. So I mean, yeah, this was definitely his big act of love for us all. All right, Jadefire.
I wrote, question, what can you learn about God? Answer that he, or that just because he is dying does not mean that he does not have power.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it specifically says, he gave up his spirit. He did not die. He laid down his life.
Yeah, because we also learned that he died sooner than they anticipated and everything, so...
Yeah, they were going up to break their legs and kill him, but he was already dead. Or laid down
And wasn't
his
it
life.
said somewhere where that none of his bones would be broken?
That is from the Psalms, yeah.
Yeah, I just, remember, a show or something. I was reading it, and I was like, and the prophecy was fulfilled. Not a bone of his was broken, or whatever.
Yep. I highlighted 49 through 54. I'm not going to read it all to you, but they wanted, after all that was done and everything, they stood back to watch what was happening, because they were thinking, well, maybe Elijah will come down and stuff, because he lived a very different life.
Who did?
Jesus.
Oh, okay.
He lived so differently that he piqued the curiosity of people. People were interested to see what this guy was all about, if he was, he went through all this and then got himself crucified over it. After all the mockery and stuff, they're like, well, let's see what happens. Some of them at least must have been like, okay, maybe something. And even the centurion, by the end of it all, when everything did happen with the curtain being torn and the earthquakes and all that, he recognized that he must have actually been the Son of God. So it became very evident that Jesus was and is who he claimed to be. Not everybody believes still, but it was interesting that his life caused them to actually really wonder, because they weren't there watching the other criminals. It was him that they were interested in.
Yeah, it would be interesting to be trying to determine, from the point of view of an unbeliever, with Jesus on the cross and the sky going dark for those 3 hours while he's up there, being like, is this related, or is this from something totally different,
Right. But there was so much that happened too, right?
It's like, is this coincidental? There's a lot going on as soon as Jesus is dying.
I mean, some people could even just assume maybe he's just saying some incantation if they don't understand the language he's speaking. And then, everything gets crazy. Including people coming back to life, so...
Yeah.
It's the start of the apocalypse.
I mean, that's what I would think. It's the end of the world.
I mean, it is the start of the end days, I guess, or whatever, because
Yeah.
then prophecies are coming true. We're in our last days.
Yep.
But days to God could be billions of years. You never know.
I am really curious as to how the sky went dark that whole afternoon.
If it was an eclipse or just really dark clouds or what.
Well, it couldn't have necessarily been a celestial body unless it was acting out of order, which God could have done, but God typically acts within his own order.
Typically. He did stop the sun once.
That's true.
Wait, what?
So he could have just, put some weird gas cloud around the sun or something. I have no idea. I have no idea what could possibly make the land go dark for 3 hours without sending the planets flying off into the universe into our death.
You could have just turned off the sun.
I have just always envisioned it as a really dark, rolling of storm clouds kind of thing, because it can get really dark with a bad enough storm.
I mean, I felt like it was nighttime one time when it was 3 o'clock, because it got kind of dark outside.
I mean, I don't know. It could be
you're
anything.
picturing not nighttime darkness, but bad
Close.
storm darkness,
Yeah.
almost that dusky darkness.
Yeah, where it's almost like nighttime darkness.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I'm saying. There's an eclipse darkness. There's a nighttime darkness. there's different kinds of dark. There's the bad storm darkness. So what do they mean when they say that darkness came over? Because it couldn't have been an eclipse, given the time frame.
Sure.
Although there was an eclipse that night. If you reverse the planets and everything backwards to April 3rd, which is when Passover was, when Jesus was 33, I believe. The moon rose in an eclipse that night, so it would have been a blood moon rising over Jerusalem that night.
Okay.
So there's also that, which I don't even know if that's even mentioned in scripture. It's just a space nerd note. So, yeah, there's the darkness over the land for 3 hours. And then, as soon as he dies, there's a wrenching earthquake that destroys the temple, which was a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
And then the tombs are opened in this earthquake, And I mean, normally I would think that'd be like, oh, we have to reseal the tombs. Well, don't have to when the people come walking out of them. That's pretty intense right there. So I can see why the centurion was like, surely this was the Son of God. And then again, that night, the moon rises red. And we know what that is now, but they wouldn't have necessarily known that before they understood the cosmos. So, pretty intense stuff.
Yeah, that is nuts.
I'd almost be disappointed if I was one of the ones to rise out of the crypt. I'm like, oh man, I have to die again? I thought I was leaving to heaven.
I'd rather only die once.
I mean, if I was like Lazarus and then I was resurrected and Jesus is still going to be around for a while, but Jesus was just leaving a little bit after.
I mean, I think of the time when I was most terrified of nature is when I was driving to the airport at like 4 a.m. So the roads were pretty abandoned, but we were in a pretty big city and all the lights went out, and that was like pretty freaky enough on its own. But then in this pitch dark rainstorm, there were these super vibrant, big bright green flashes of lights going through the whole sky. Like I couldn't tell where they were coming from. And I was like, what the heck? And it was a terrible storm. It smashed up the library and some of the planes at the airport got pushed into each other and stuff. Like it was an intense storm and I was reasonably nervous driving around in it. We pulled over for a little bit. And I was worried we were going to get smashed, but we were okay. But it was an intense storm, and I understood what was going on for the most part. It turned out that the bright green flash was a transformer getting struck by lightning several times and eventually going out completely. But
It's a transformer.
you know, like when you drive past electrical cages and it's all like high voltage, don't touch, and there's like 700 power lines going into it.
Yeah.
One of those like went out completely. So that's what the bright green flashes were. But I was terrified. I was real scared because I had no idea what was going on.
Yeah.
And could you imagine much more than that? Because that was basically just a really bad storm when it comes down to it. This one, they had darkness and earthquakes and dead people and I would be a little
I would
concerned.
scream if someone who was thought to be dead walked out of the grave.
Yeah, I'd be pretty freaked out. If, like, my dad came walking in, I'd be like, what are you trying to do? I got a phone call once from someone who was like, Michelle, this is Dad. And I was like, no, you're not. What are you talking about? Like, I thought it was a mean joke that someone was trying to play. I think it was a guy who got my phone number somehow by chance because he was very, very apologetic when he realized I was like, my dad's dead, so why are you doing this? And he was like, I'm so sorry. But anyway, that just shows how suspicious and unbelieving I would be if somebody were to come up and be like, I'm Dad. I'd be like, no, you're not, you're a demon.
Imagine if it actually was your dad, that you're like,
Yeah, it would be terrifying. And I have one more note. This is probably my longest section. I really like this section.
We didn't even ask for your notes.
I
You
don't
just
care.
jumped in. I was purposely
They're my
saving
notes.
you for last.
They're my notes. I have one more note. Towards the end in 55, it says, many women who had followed Jesus from Galilee and looked after him were there watching from a distance. I thought that was really interesting that Jesus still needed looking after while he was on earth. And so there was still that womanly role in his life that empowered him and took care of him. And yeah, I thought that was really cool.
girl power.
Yeah, girl power in the right sense. Like, unlike in the movie when they're like, we'll take it from here, and then they fail miserably, and I was like, what the heck? They actually did carry Jesus along physically. And I just think that's really cool. And they're the ones who are able to stay and watch because nobody's paying any attention to the women. They're accusing the men. You knew Jesus. Weren't you there? You know, but nobody's paying any attention to the women. And so that role is very important, as you can see here. And it provides some advantages of being able to be at the cross.
You'll be at the foot of the cross and someone's like, no, never mind.
I have one more note.
No,
Do you
no,
wanna
no,
do your
no,
note
no,
first?
no.
In Psalm 22, he calls out Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. And that's referencing back to Psalm 22. And there's actually a lot in that whole chapter that really highlights the day of the crucifixion, which is pretty cool. So, although, yes, he is directly quoting a verse from there, I do think that it's more, hey, look at this chapter, and you will see that I'm the one that they're talking about here.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
What else is said in there? Like, what kind of... Just a couple of the hints in there.
Let's see here. I am a worm and not a man, scorned by mankind and despised by people. Everyone who sees me mocks me. They sneer and shake their heads. He relies on the Lord. Let him save him. Let the Lord rescue him, since he takes pleasure in him. I am poured out like water. All my bones are disjointed. My heart is like wax melting within me. My strength is dried up like baked clay. My tongue sticks to the roof of my mouth. You put me into the dust of death. Dogs have surrounded me. A gang of evildoers has closed in on me. They pierced my hands and my feet. I can count all my bones. People look and stare at me. They divide my garments among themselves, and they cast lots for my clothing.
Yeah, that was in here, too. Oh, man. Yeah, there's a lot there.
Yeah.
The mocking, to say, well, let the God save him. I think that was a little bit earlier and stuff, yeah.
Yeah, so I really think it's really pointing back, hey, go read Psalm 22 or whatever they called it at that point.
Because you're living this right now.
Yes.
Word for word, almost.
Yes.
That's amazing. All right. Ruby, what's your note for this section?
I've got one note, so I won't take half an hour.
I really like this section. It's awesome, like I said.
What's your note, Ruby?
What does God want my life to look like? Not like the guards who crucified Jesus, because in verse 55, they realized who Jesus was. Like, you mentioned how one of the centurions said, like, this truly must be God. And then, like, being one of the guards who just crucified him, I'd be like, oh, that was a mistake.
Right?
Yeah, he was the centurion, so he was probably over all of the guards who crucified him.
Yep.
So, like...
You got his blood on your hands. It's like, oof, dang it, that was a little bit of a wrong thing to do there.
Yeah, hopefully he got the message that he can be saved.
Yeah.
That is my section.
All right. Well, then we will move on to the burial of Jesus. At least that's what mine says. 57 through 61.
Mine too. 57 through 66.
Ooh, you go a little further.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the end of the chapter. 66.
Oh, but there's another chapter. I'm like, but I've got more notes.
Yep.
What?
What about you guys?
My next section is 57 through 61, the burial of Jesus.
Okay, same as mine.
57 through 61.
Which means Rosella's is the same. All right.
Yep.
So, Jadefire, lay it on us.
My note is question, what does God want your life to look like? And my answer is that just because you're rich does not mean you need to be selfish. Because one, like, a rich guy is like, I forgot his name.
Joseph.
Yeah. He comes and buys a burial place for him, basically.
Yep. Yeah, mine relates kind of back to my note on the last one and about just who he was and how he was recognized. So people did see that he was a wonderful teacher and man, and some did see that he was God. So that there were those very willing to take care of him. Obviously his own mother, but even the other women that traveled with him. And even those, then they all wanted to take care of him in death too, as we'll learn about getting his burial stuff ready and stuff.
Yeah, the three women mentioned aren't even his mom.
Right. What about Joseph and James, the mother of Joseph and James?
Oh, maybe.
That might be his mother.
I would think that it would say mother of Jesus because it says that.
Well,
later.
it gets weird later because he talks, like, I know there's some where he's like, well, this is now your son or whatever to replace him, you know what I mean? So, like, it's getting to a point where he's kind of transitioning from being her son almost.
Okay.
So, I mean, I don't know. I have no idea. And so, like, yeah, the way he lived, what he did, there were people willing to come together to take care of him, pay for his burial, and they couldn't even bear to be, like, separated from him, even though he was sort of separated at this point, since he had left for a little while.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little while.
Yeah, just a little while. He's coming back.
Yeah, didn't he do his, like, work on Friday, rest on the Sabbath, and rose on Sunday? Is that what happened?
I think that is the most common believed timeline, yes.
Okay.
So, yeah. It was just, again, about who he was, how he lived, and that people could see that. People chose not to, but... And I just thought it was very interesting just how, like, attached, like, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary, they just sat the opposite of the tomb. They could not bear to be away from him.
Yeah.
Because he was that important and that special.
Yeah.
Big Mama, what do you got?
I like the reminder of how Jesus, or how God does deal with us on an individual basis and not as a group. I know that the Sanhedrin was separate from the Pharisees, right? Or am I thinking of something?
I know the Sadducees and
Sadducees. Okay.
Pharisees
So
are
the
different.
Sanhedrin was part of the Pharisees.
I think so.
So Joseph was a prominent member of the Sanhedrin, and earlier if you remember, Jesus said several times, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites, you brood of vipers. That's a very all-inclusive. You teachers of the law and Pharisees are hypocrites, brood of vipers, sons of the liar, very harsh judgments put up against them.
Yeah.
So Joseph would have been a teacher of the law or a Pharisee at that point, but that's obviously not applying to him.
Sure. And we've seen examples of others too.
Yeah, absolutely. You see that throughout the Old Testament where Jericho goes down, but Rahab is saved because of her faith.
Sure. I was even talking about just other Pharisee people, but yeah.
Yes, like Nicodemus.
Yeah, and I always forget his name, but the one with the daughter that was quote-unquote sleeping.
Oh, yeah. And so it's easy to get caught in the trap of thinking that God makes just a rash judgments against the lot of someone. Like, all of you are going down because you have been sinful and awful. But that's not true. He does make a judgment against a country all at once sometimes, or a group of people all at once sometimes. But if there are righteous people within that group, they are exempt from that.
Sure.
Even Lot in Sodom and Gomorrah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Joseph here is just another reminder of that just because they were Pharisees does not mean that every single one was bad. It was a corrupt, words are hard.
Well, corrupt organization.
Yes.
Yeah.
The organization seemed to be corrupt, and it wasn't a good way of doing things. Surprise, surprise, when it wasn't set up by the Old Testament.
Right.
But Joseph himself really was looking forward to the kingdom of God and wanted to be a part of that and believed in Jesus.
Yeah.
I would venture to say, based on his actions.
I think that's actually a really good point that you're talking about too, about just like he condemns a nation or a group of people or whatever, and sometimes that even can be the death, like with Sodom and Gomorrah, right? The whole city was destroyed, but some were spared because they trusted in him. But I don't think, I think we can get caught up in that idea because we see the examples of people physically being spared, but I think sometimes they're not even necessarily spared of the destruction of that place, and they may pass away, but that isn't a bad thing anymore because you just get to, if you are truly trusting in God, you're going to be okay in the long run.
Yeah.
Your spirit is going to be somewhere safe.
Yeah.
So, because some people can be like, well, there were good people there. Why would God just destroy that whole place then, right? That's not fair. Granted, nobody's good, right? Not even one.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think, we literally are all going to die one way or another pretty quickly in the grand scheme of things. And to live is Christ and to die is gain, so it's really not that bad of a thing to die.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what Paul says, and to be to live is Christ, and to die is gain.
Yeah.
For to.
Yeah.
That's not my word.
Yeah,
I
dying
would
is gain.
still like all of my kids to outlive me.
I mean,
Breaks my heart.
preferably,
when I hear
yes.
people losing their children. Alright, anyways, back to
all right. Rosella, what is your note?
What did you learn about who God is? That God will always take care of his son Jesus, even if it seems like he just killed his son, but he resurrected him.
Jesus actually gave up his life, though. God asked him to, but it was ultimately up to Jesus to do it.
True.
God still would have found another way to save us.
Yes.
And is that all he takes care of?
Nope. He takes care of everyone.
That's right. He takes care of all of us. He is the best caretaker, the best parent we could ever have. He is the perfect parent.
Even if he asks us to do really hard things
Or give up our lives, which I don't know if he's ever done that, but
that I'm aware of.
Well, yeah, with ours, I'm sure he has called people to do things that they're like, this is probably going to end up with my life being shortened, and they still go do it.
Yep.
But I feel like usually if something like that happens, he's still like, it's like, that's what you think. But since you showed belief, it's going to be longer than if you didn't.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? I mean, Stephen died.
What?
He was our first recorded martyr, right? And
Yeah.
they all knew that they were going to be attacked and hunted down or oppressed and whatever. So, and he kept doing what he needed to do.
Mm-hmm.
And he even reacted very similar to Jesus in his death, right? Just seeking for forgiveness for them.
Yeah.
Didn't he say something like that? I'm trying to remember exactly.
Yep, right before he...
Yeah.
I memorized all of that. I said it was going to, and I read it over a few times. I
Good
got
job.
6, but not 7.
All right. So then the last section of chapter 27, the guard at the tomb. But we'll start with Ruby since...
Wait.
What?
Did I say my last?
This is part of it. I was just explaining that.
Oh.
We will start with Ruby since she had both sections as one.
The burial of Jesus. What did I learn about Jesus? That he is so powerful that even when he's dead, the Pharisees still fear him. I kind of get this from like 62 to 64-ish. They literally go to Pilate and are like, it said that he's going to rise again in 3 days. Can we have his tomb sealed so that doesn't happen?
Well, I think they were more concerned about his body being stolen, but yes.
I suppose. That makes sense.
Why would somebody steal his body?
To
Tell
claim...
the people he's been raised from the dead. It's right there in verse
Yeah.
64.
What? Oh.
All right.
They were still afraid.
They were afraid. That's actually connected to my note, but we'll get there. Big Mama, what do you got?
Mine's very similar. They remembered that he said after 3 days I will rise again, even though his disciples kind of forgot that point. I think that's kind of odd.
That's a good point.
I think it's really odd that the Pharisees heard that, and that it was the disciples' ears were basically deafened to it until later, when they were like, "Oh yeah, he said he was gonna do."
That's
Again,
hilarious.
another reason why I think they were teenage boys. Oh yeah, he said he was gonna do that.
That's a mockery to teenage boys. I would know, because I am one.
Teenage boys are often mocked, so get used to it.
6 more years.
Don't
Teenagers in general.
Yeah, that's right. Don't be a boy that can be mocked, though. You'll get less mocked.
All right. Rosella, what do you got?
For the guard at the tomb,
Yes.
what does he want your life to look like? To only fear him.
Yeah. They are fearing him, but not quite for the same reasons. They're fearing what's going to happen to them, really.
Yeah. They want to keep their followers.
Yeah. Jadefire, go ahead.
Okay. What can you learn about God that no one can stop him?
Sure.
No one.
You don't quite learn that in this section, but yes. This sets it up, and then we find out it's futile later.
Yeah.
But you're right. My comment was just pointing out the hypocrisy and the inability to follow their own rules and stuff of the Pharisees once again, because we get told that this is the next day, the one after preparation day, therefore Sabbath, which is the rest day when you're not supposed to be working, and yet here they are not resting at all because they're panicking and rushing around getting people to guard tombs because they're nervous that things are not going to go the way they wanted to go.
That's one of the things they tried to arrest Jesus for, is healing someone's hand. Like,
I know. They're a bunch of hypocrites.
I mean, they actually have to do work. Well, he was like, just your hand's healed, that's all.
But the bigger part is that they might even be doing, they might not consider it work because they're just telling people to go tell people to do something, right? But they are not resting at all in God. They're not trusting in God to handle it. None of that. They are.
Well,
I'm not sure what it entails to set a seal on the tomb, but they did set a seal on the tomb and place the guards.
Oh, I suppose that's true. They did do that. But even just the idea of we're supposed to rest, and that doesn't mean just take it easy, but we're just supposed to rest in the fact that God has taken care of us, and there's peace in that, right? And they're not at peace. So, silly Pharisees.
I mean, Jesus called them hypocrites before.
Yes, I know. We just talked about that just a minute ago. But
They can be extra hypocrite now because Jesus isn't around to be like, you guys are being hypocrites again.
all right. So then we move on to chapter 28, our last chapter. The last melon.
The what?
Nothing. So my first section here is 1 through 10.
Mine too.
Yep. All right. So we have Jesus has risen. And I think I'll start this
The
time.
resurrection of Jesus.
The resurrection.
the resurrection.
Resurrection morning.
Oh, I like it. I don't know why we're singing to Neverending Story.
Resurrection morning.
All right. So I highlighted verses 5, 8, and 10. The angel said to the women, "Do not be afraid, for I know that you are looking for Jesus who was crucified." So the women hurried away from the tomb, afraid yet filled with joy, and ran to tell his disciples. Then Jesus said to them, "Do not be afraid. Go and tell my brothers, and go to Galilee. There they will see me." Are you catching the theme? Catching the theme at all?
Do not be afraid!
Both the angel and Jesus tell the women to not be afraid, and all the astonishment, earthquakes, fainting guards, do not be afraid, for Jesus is alive, just as he said he would be. So let us rejoice and not be afraid. There's no reason to fear. If they couldn't kill him, and he has power over death, we got nothing to worry about. So that's my note. Sure. Let's see. Jadefire, you go.
All right, my note. Wait, what? All right, there it is. What can you learn about God? That he can raise his son. I mean, that's literally what happened.
Not wrong.
All right, Rosella.
I wrote that you cannot trap Jesus.
Very good. That's true. You can. They tried. It didn't work.
Don't give it another go.
Ruby.
Mine. What does God want my life to look like? That if I ever I doubt this would happen, but if I do ever see an angel, I feel like there's gonna be some indication that they are sent from God or something. Cause it says there was lightning flashed around him and his robe was dazzling and stuff. And if I know that, I don't have to be afraid, even if it's a little scary at first or startling. So mine is basically, don't be afraid if you see an angel.
Just don't be afraid.
It's kind of interesting how the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and yet he's constantly like, don't be afraid.
Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid.
Wow.
Don't be afraid.
To see him is to be afraid of him, but don't be afraid of him.
Right. And Big Mama, what's your note?
Mine is that there was another violent earthquake this next 2 mornings later, that moved the stone away from the tomb for them. So that was interesting, that the earthquakes are continuing. And
Aftershock.
yeah. And the guards were so shaken by fear that they became like dead men. And yet the women are just told not to be afraid. So the guys passed out in fear.
Yep.
And the women are like, oh, okay, have you seen our Lord? I thought that was kind of amusing.
It
I
is
guess.
very
I don't know.
amusing.
But I think there's something there too where they do take comfort in Jesus' presence a lot, and that's why they stayed so long. That's why they wanted to go back there right away in the morning. Because it's as the day was dawning. They didn't even wait past, they didn't wait for high noon. They're like, it's light. The light's starting to come. Let's go.
Yeah.
They wanted to get back there and be with Jesus. And so they were seeking that comfort because of their agony of the last.
Well, they had prepared things for him too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so they were intent on their mission, and they weren't. And the guards had to be afraid. I mean, with everything that went down. And then they're like, all right, you guys get to go sit by the tomb all night. That couldn't have been.
Yippee.
I mean, they were kind of on edge waiting all night, I'm sure, for something to happen like this. So
Sure.
they probably weren't expecting that. A man in lightning robes coming.
I doubt they just slept and was like, oh, this is such a nice night. I mean, it was already a little uncomfortable, but...
They were probably, expecting the disciples to come sneaking up, so they were, vigilant for pebbles and stuff, and then this guy shows up in lightning robes and pushes the rock away on his own. That's, they're like, forget it.
They're like, no. Nope, I'm done.
So the different reactions that people can have to Jesus and his glory is, I think, my takeaway from this section.
Okay. Yeah. It's interesting, though, because they were afraid, but it didn't stop them from doing wrong in the next section.
Okay.
We have the guards' report. I have verses 11 through 15.
The guards report what they witnessed, verses 11 through 15.
The soldiers.
The report of the guard.
The soldiers bribed to lie.
Okay. Everybody's 11 through 15?
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Jadefire, why don't you go?
Yeah. What does God want your, oh, I must have got distracted reading my question, because it just says, what does God want your...
Life to look like?
Yeah. What does God want your life to look like? To not lie.
Yeah, that one sticks out for you a lot, doesn't it?
Yes.
All right. Rosella?
What does God want your life to look like? To only obey Him. I mean, like, honor your father and mother, but, like, they're obeying Him, so you're technically obeying Him by obeying them.
And he does
You are to obey your parents, but that to do that would be obeying God, because He tells you to.
And for both the lying and the obeying, does he say that because he wants your life to be harder to prove something?
No.
Mm-mm.
Okay, so why does he say that? Why does he want your life to look
So we don't fall into sin.
Yeah.
And is sin fun?
No.
Does sin look fun?
Yes.
Sometimes.
Yes.
Yeah, it doesn't look fun all the time.
It's usually dressed up real pretty to
Usually.
look like it's exactly what's going to make things easier for you, doesn't it?
Or like,
Sometimes exactly like chocolate.
Sometimes it is chocolate.
So the priests were a little worried about stuff, or not the priests, the guards were a little bit worried, and so they took the comfort of the priest and were like, okay, well, they'll cover us as long as we just lie. But who covers you if you tell the truth?
God.
And who's more powerful?
God.
Yep. As we've just learned, right? They couldn't trap him. They couldn't keep him out. They couldn't stop him. These were things all said already. All right. So I highlighted 12 through 15, so pretty much the entire section. But basically, it's just them being hypocrites again, because now they're encouraging more false witness and lying. They just don't get it. If they have to lie about it and come up with some stupid story about it, then there must be something else that's actually happening, and they should want to go and see the truth and be like, oh, maybe we're wrong. Of course, then they'd have to be admit to being wrong.
Wouldn't you want to go find out who this lightning-clothed guy was?
Right? I would want to know a lot of things.
I'd bring my really good, strong binoculars so I can look from very far away.
So, yeah, it's just how fear can drive us, because they were fearing losing power. They were fearing being wrong. And fear can drive so much, and it can consume you and cause you to do some stupid stuff. And we just need to remember who we truly should fear is God, because He cannot be stopped.
I might contend that fear is the motivator for all sin.
I mean, I have an ear to hear that.
I mean, didn't you say there were like 3 things that people seek, and that's what usually causes lying, like security?
Yes, acceptance, security, and purpose. Are those the 3? Or is acceptance and security
It sounds good enough to be true.
I think it's security, acceptance, and purpose. And that covers an umbrella of a lot of stuff. But yes, I think that all sin falls under us seeking one of those things, and the fear that we're not going to have that if we don't sin.
The fear of losing things, the fear of not getting things. Yeah.
But
fear is a very big driving factor, which is why we are to fear nothing but God. It's just like you're not supposed to love anything but God. You're not supposed to put anything before God.
God is number 1.
Correct. And we need to believe that fully, and we often don't.
Yeah.
We often have little corners where we're like, but He's not going to take care of that. But it's usually things that we just like want for comfort purposes or things like that. It's like, because God might not give you exactly that thing, but you're trying to use that thing to fill something else that God has fulfilled.
Yeah, on the surface it's a comfort thing, but it often has roots that are much, much deeper
Absolutely.
than just comfort.
Fruit to root.
Fruit to root.
All right. And Ruby, what is your note on this section?
My note. What does God want your life to look like? Not to be bribed by earthly things like money, because it didn't turn out well for Judas and what?
No, it did not. You're correct.
Oh, it didn't turn out well for Judas, and these guards are lying because of it. So not turning out great for them either.
No.
All right, so he's back. Guards are lying, and now we have the Great Commission. 16 to the end of the chapter.
The Great Commission.
The Great Commission.
Is that what's titled for everybody?
Yes.
That's why I just said
16
yep.
to the end
Perfect.
of Matthew.
Guards are lying. Better hope they don't
Lie on you.
you.
Get it? You get it? Some good
They're
veggie
gonna
taste
lie on 'em.
jokes.
They're gonna eat them.
Veggie tales.
All right. So, let us start with Rosella.
Yay! What does he want your life to look like? To teach others about him.
Mine's a lot like that.
Same.
All right. Well, go ahead, Jadefire.
What does God want your life to look like? To spread God's word.
I mean, he's telling us right here.
Yep.
And how do you do that?
I maybe in like a public school or something.
But you're not public school, so is it only for public schoolers?
No.
I'm asking how you do that.
Well, like with a friend, you could like take them to church or like read the Bible to them or tell them verses or like maybe like every time you see them, like just give them a little verse for them over the week.
Yes.
Did you know that there's another thing besides actually just speaking that you can help spread God's love and word?
By acting.
By the way you act. Correct.
Because, I mean, we do summer school, and that's a public school where maybe not everyone is a Christian or whatever, and, like, you make friends your age. You can tell them about Jesus, and you guys are willing to pick them up, and we have sleepovers and stuff, and we can bring them to church, and then, like, they learn.
I do try to go out of my way to make room for people to get rides to Awana and church.
And sometimes you just go out of your way for us stuff. That's more
But
rare.
hopefully you are good influences and not bad influences on those people.
Yeah.
I think it's important to discuss this because it can be very easy to be like, oh, well, it's for other people who have opportunity to do that.
Sure.
But you have the opportunity to be living your life in a way that shows that. And if you think that this is for other people, then maybe you need to look at your life and determine what you need to get out of it or put into it.
Yeah, it's not always a calling to go to other nations. Like, some people are called specifically to do that. They feel driven.
It's that to make disciples of all nations.
Yes, but we're not all called to do every nation, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
you can also do it in your own backyard, essentially, right?
Yes.
Like, everywhere you go, you can be living this way, and when people take notice and ask questions, it's a perfect opportunity. But you can also broach the subject if you feel that's an appropriate time to do so, and God is pushing you into that moment.
Like,
Because sometimes people are not going to be receptive, so...
like, we usually are just surrounded by Christians. Like, we do Bible, when we go to church, we go to one, like, all places where you're not really going to be able to tell someone about Jesus. I mean, sometimes, yes, because maybe they don't really care. They're just there for fun and stuff. But, like, if you're always acting that way, when you just go to the store, like, if you're always acting in a way that makes you a nice person, someone, like, talks to you and stuff, like, that is perfect opportunities for you to show people about Jesus. Like,
Absolutely.
it's throwing out the incentive to come ask you about it if you act kindly and are, like, well behaved, I guess. And
Another thing that's very important to note here is that it doesn't say, therefore, go tell the gospel to everyone and then leave. It says,
Yes.
make disciples of all nations. And discipling takes what? Discipline. That's the same word. And discipline takes practice and time and energy and consistency and just that in and out constantly being with someone. And so it's important too, in church or quizzing or Bible study, to be preaching the word to each other as well and helping each other. Well, I'm struggling with this. Well, here's the verses that I might remind you of that might encourage you. Well, I'm struggling with this. Well, I don't think you're applying this truth into your life right now. Is that helpful to remember that? And so it's important to preach the gospel to other believers too, to keep each other on track and watch each other's backs, because that's what discipling really is.
Which is also why you need them to be receptive. Because if because like for you guys, we can disciple you, and we have a little bit more control over that because you do kind of have to do what we say because you live in this house and we take care of you and all that. And there's already a built-in mechanism for us to teach you and for you to listen. With people outside of that, they don't necessarily have to listen to you. They can go their own way, do their own thing. So they also have to make a decision. And that's helpful also to bring those people to pique that interest so that you can get into those conversations and start helping them learn things by the way you act and live. And that even goes for people in church that profess a belief in God, but are maybe struggling in certain areas. You can still disciple and make disciples of these people too, because they might not be trusting in God in their everyday life. There's a lot of us that don't.
We don't know how to trust him in the different aspects of our life, and that's why we need each other to learn.
Yeah. So, yes. I mean, you want to bring in new people to believe as well. That's very important, but there's also room for helping people that at least have that initial belief that show up at church or Awana or whatever.
And in order to be pulling people along behind you, you have to be growing yourself.
True.
So you have to be learning, you have to be applying, you have to be showing God's light in your life consistently if you want to be showing other people how they can do the same thing.
There's a thing called the Wordless book where it's just a bunch of colors, and the last color is green for grow, like grow in Jesus and stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a very important aspect. You don't want to just become stagnant and dry up or whatever. So, Ruby, your note?
Mine is, what does God want my life to look like? To make disciples for him wherever I can. So, like what we've just been talking about.
Yep. I mean, that is what he tells us to do. So I'm not surprised that that's a lot of the notes here. I went a little bit different direction with just the end here. And surely I am with you always to the very end of the age. And just the fact that we are not alone in this. So again, no reason to fear. He's there with us. He wants us to work alongside him, not on our own. And there's a lot of comfort to be had to know that we have the perfect caretaker right alongside, guiding us, giving us the words we need. He illustrated how we are to behave and act and do things so that we can live that way. And Big Mama?
Mine's from the same place. Remember, I am with you always to the end of the age, and that beautiful promise and trusting in that can change your life.
Yeah. I like that you picked the same area.
Yep.
I'm glad you guys went in a different direction, because I wasn't thinking that it was going to be like, oh, I don't always know what everyone else is going to have for their notes. I like it when it's different.
Yeah, it's nice to have some other looks into everything. So, all right. Well, that means now that we are finished with the book of Matthew, it is time for application.
I've got mine ready.
I already have mine.
Ruby, what is your application?
Oh, yay. Mine is at the beginning, the crucifixion. It was chapter 27, verses 33 to 44. Not to try and prove myself all the time. Like, it's okay that not, like, if people don't believe I can do things or stuff, like, I don't need them to. Like, all I need is God to believe me. I mean, like, if it's... What?
No, keep going.
You can't give a look like that and be like, keep going.
I just find the application super interesting because she wrote this weeks ago.
Oh, okay.
And we just discussed some of this afternoon.
Oh, gotcha.
Well, more like morning.
Huh?
I said more like this morning.
Well, right, this morning. Sorry. We discussed this morning. Literally for like a good half hour in our room.
Yes, that did happen. That happened.
So I just find it super fascinating that is your application to what you've drawn out of this, because you actually knew this truth as I was also trying to help you understand this truth. Obviously, God's trying to tell you something. It's just amazing.
I forgot what I was saying.
Sorry.
But that I don't always need people to believe me. If God knows what is really happening, like, it doesn't matter what other people think or what other people think I can do. God knows what I can think or do.
He knows the ultimate truth, right?
Mm-hmm. Like, he knew Jesus could get down off that cross, which made it all the better that, he put that in the Bible so we all knew he could get off that cross, but he stayed there for us.
Yes. That does make it much more impactful, for sure. That he chose every step of the way to go through the mockery, the punishments, the pain, and the death. every second he had to choose to stay there, that would be hard.
Yeah.
Just to end the pain and get down.
I mean, for example, this morning at like 4 or 5 or something, I was super uncomfortable in bed, and I just had to get up. We were camping out in our sunroom, and with the whole family celebrating some stuff, and one of the little ones was on one side of me, and Big Mama was on the other side of me, and I just couldn't get in a comfortable position at all, and I tried to stay there for a long time, because I know everybody likes me to stay around when they wake up. It's nice, but eventually I had the power to get up, and so I used it and got up, because I was in a lot of discomfort, and not anywhere near what Jesus was going through.
His memory foam mattress is not cutting it for me.
Yes, exactly.
That was Jesus. If you thought it was as much, or like if you compared it to that or something, Jesus probably be like, "You want to trade? Do you want to trade? I will trade with you. I will trade with you. You can come up here. I'll go lay on that bed. I'll be uncomfortable."
You will drink the cup that I am drinking. All right, Rosella, your application.
To only fear him.
I like it. That's very similar to mine.
I said this earlier for my note for the guard at the tomb.
Yeah. Okay. And Jadefire, what do you got?
To not lie. Probably, I'm pretty sure a continuing of last week.
Yep, that's a good thing for you to be working on over this summer break.
I think one thing that really likes to lure you in is exaggeration. The all or nothing. Like, there is no way I could have possibly... Is there really? You know? Take it back a notch and be like, well, I guess that's true. That could have possibly happened.
Honestly.
I guess it wasn't as big of a deal as I'm making it up in my mind. That sort of stuff.
Yeah, because you even lied on things just as a, reflex, because you've gotten accustomed to it. So even when it wouldn't even be a big issue, where it's like, yeah, you're admitting to doing something wrong, but it's not a huge problem, you will lie. And because you've already lied, then you just stick to your guns. And I think one step in this whole process of not lying is to not speak immediately. You speak too quickly and dig yourself a hole very, very fast. So you need to learn to take a moment in your life, unlike everything. Just don't speak right away. Because that'll help you not to do the things that you're causing you to lie in the first place, too. If you take a moment and actually, what are the consequences here? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And then redirect your thoughts to something else so it doesn't tempt you. Or seek help, even. If you're being tempted, come see me or mom, you know? Be like, hey, I really want to do this thing. I need to be away from that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So, some helpful tips anyway. All right. Yeah, mine is also to fear only God and not be fearing anything else, not what other people think, what they're going to say or do, because God's got my back. He's going to be watching after me and be hopefully bringing the corrections I need when I am, misguided or willfully being disobedient in something or whatever it may be. So, and not to just not fear whatever it is, to lock down the things that I'm obviously fearing, digging deep into what it is that I'm looking for that I already have, because I do have everything I need with God. That's mine.
My turn?
I think you're all that's left.
Mine is to not fear, like we've been talking about. I think there's a lot of things that I'm fearing in different pockets. Not like one big thing necessarily, but little pockets of it all over.
Yep.
And to be like the women here who do take comfort in Jesus' presence even after he's gone. They continued seeking him because they went to him for comfort constant. And so being like that rather than trying to fix or I guess just fix in different ways the different things that I'm fearing are going to cause destruction throughout my life.
Yeah.
And so just instead of trying to fix those things, going to Jesus for comfort and then acting from that place instead. Does that make sense?
I think so, yeah. I mean, I feel in a similar thing. There are definitely little areas that I'm fearing. I don't think I have an overall fear of life or anything, but there are just little weird pockets. I mean, fear looking like an idiot sometimes or whatever, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even stupid, simple things, but obviously I'm not fearing God in those moments. I'm fearing my own like loss of reputation, whatever that may be, or whatever.
Yeah.
Or just, fearing that I'm screwing up my children, or I mean, it ranges all over the place. And I just need to be better at turning to God and recognizing that He's in control, and I'm certainly not in control in the way people around me behave or think things, no matter what I do. I could put on the best show in the world, and people will still, possibly crucify me, right? Jesus was perfect, and it didn't matter to a lot of people.
Yeah.
So.
He wasn't perfect in their eyes.
But he was perfect, objectively.
Correct.
All right.
What was Rosella's advocacy?
To only fear God.
There was a few of us that were on that path.
Okay.
All right.
Dear Heavenly Father, please help us all with our applications, especially mine. Help our listeners to have a good summer break, and amen.
Amen.
I cracked my toes, sorry.
Oh, that was okay. That's what it was. You got loud toes.
I
All right.
do have loud toes.
You go yours over the weekend. What?
It's whispering because of that one.
We're
It's
still
so creepy. You have a mason jar of babies in your room.
right.
Well, I like hearing her notes, actually.
I did too, but I had a plan and she butchered it.
Since 2001. Should I mention the baby quick? Because he definitely made some noises.
I think it'll be fine.
Okay.
It was only at the end, and people will be like, "Oh, the baby's there." is
You
what I'm
squeak
thinking.
nice and loud while
He's
you're
like,
talking about your application.
In fact, now that you said that and I did that, and you made those noises, that's all probably going on the blooper reel. So.
He was chugging his milk over here, man.